Welcome to Preggy Pals. My name is Emily Mason, and I'll be your host today. If you haven't already, be sure to visit our website at newmommymedia.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter, which keeps you updated on all the episodes we release each week. Another great way to stay updated is to hit that subscribe button in your podcast app. And if you're looking for a way to get even more involved with our show, then check out our online community. It's called Mighty Moms. That's where we chat more about the topics discussed here on our show, and it's also an easy way to learn about our recordings so you can join us live.
Is that a plus sign?
Pink or blue? Hospital or home birth?
What type of food should I be eating?
I think I just peed myself. I'm pregnant and I have to exercise.
What pregnancy glow?
Wait, was that a contraction?
Gotta make these pants fit. I've got kinkles.
What do you mean there's more than one?
You've got the symptoms, and now you've got the support you need for a happy 9 months. This is Preggy Pals, your pregnancy, your way.
Now, let's meet today's panel of guests. Our guests today are Kelsey Peterson and Jennifer Para. Kelsey, can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Yeah, of course. So I've been happily married to my husband TJ since 2016. We decided that we wanted to start a family right away, and we had absolutely no luck with that. I already knew that I had PCOS, and so we met with a fertility specialist, and after quite a bit of tests, they told us that it would be really difficult to get pregnant. I think we had like a 30% chance with IVF. After starting the process, we decided quickly that that just wasn't the route we wanted to go. So we were totally fine just being us and the dogs. In March of 2019, my sister called me and said, "Hey, I have a coworker friend that's pregnant and the adoptive parents changed their minds. Do you want to adopt a baby?" Immediately, I said yes, and I called TJ and I was so overjoyed. We met her a few days later and she was due in only 2 weeks. After what started to seem like the fastest home study ever, I got a call that she was being induced in actually only 3 days. After a lot of rushing and complete miracle work from our social worker, 3 days later, we met our daughter. She's now 5, and adopting her is the best thing that we have ever done.
That's an amazing story. I remember when you and I were kind of in that same journey together, and hearing your story just gives me goosebumps because I was so overjoyed for you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Our second guest we have today is Jennifer. Jennifer, I know you have a large following on social media. Can you please tell us about yourself and your family?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Para. I've been married to my husband, Caesar, for going on about 22 years. I have 4 beautiful kids. I was pregnant with my oldest, Gabby, who's 20 now, and had a partial hysterectomy during her delivery. Then we welcomed Jonathan through private domestic adoption. He's 13 right now. And we were foster parents to our final 2, Coda and Kaya. They came in as Coda was a toddler and Kaya was a newborn. They are siblings biologically. And we fostered them for about 2.5 years before we were able to adopt them.
I'm very excited to hear more about your journey and everything that you've gone through over the past 20 plus years to get to where you are now.
Yes, thank you.
I will also be sharing some of my own pregnancy and adoption experiences throughout this podcast, but let's first take a break and we will return and dive into today's topic. Today, we're discussing pregnancy expectations when it comes to adopting a child. Whether you're pregnant now after adopting a child or have always dreamed of welcoming a child into your home by adoption, we're going to talk about experiencing pregnancy and birth and everything in between. So if you're interested, you've come to the right place. So I'll let both of you kind of answer these questions as we go through them. Feel free to just jump in, but this is an easy question first. Did you adopt before or after you got pregnant, and what was that experience like for you?
Okay. This Jennifer, I could go first.
Yeah.
I adopted after pregnancy. In fact, it was like 7 years after being pregnant. So there was a big time to think about and really make sure we were ready and to proceed with adoption and if that was the route we were going to go. So, especially with my daughter, we wanted to really prepare her as well. And of course, we went this route because I had a partial hysterectomy during labor with her. So for us, we went through private domestic adoption, which is also called like independent adoption. With my son Jonathan, is where you get matched with the birth mom, and that was a whole process as well. A lot of waiting and potential matches during that. And then we decided after we finalized his adoption, we became foster parents and welcomed Coda and Kaya into our home. And it took about 2.5 years before we were able to adopt them.
Kelsey, you adopted your daughter, but you've not ever had a pregnancy. Is that correct?
Right. So I have never been pregnant. We did try, the very start of IVF. We tried some fertility meds, and I decided I don't like what this is doing to my body. I didn't like how I was reacting to it. And honestly, it made me a little crazy. So I decided, I don't want to try to get pregnant. And then my daughter, so adopting her was a complete surprise. She definitely was not planned. She's the best surprise, that we've ever had. And now, after adopting her, she's 5 years old. We adopted her officially when she was 9 months old, but we did have her since birth, and it was a private adoption. Um, Now, my husband and I are totally happy with one child, and we have honestly no interest in trying to get pregnant again. We have thought about doing foster care in the future when everything kind of calms down. We definitely feel like that is a good choice for us to help some families out on that route.
Absolutely. It's very interesting listening to how we all kind of have a different journey. My husband and I adopted our daughter before I got pregnant with our second daughter. So our daughter is 7, almost 8 years old now. And we kind of had the same journey as Kelsey mentioned with some fertility issues. We had been married for almost 5 years at the point where we kind of went into that adoption space. But we really looked at what are our options. We went to some fertility specialists, and I was really told, we can't figure out what's wrong with you, unexplained fertility. And we started down the path of IUI, IVF, and then I didn't really, like Kelsey said, like what it was doing to my body. And so I backed off. We went down the adoption route. We adopted our daughter when she was about 1.5 years, but she came to live with us when she was 10 months old. And then when we moved back to Iowa, we went to another fertility specialist, and they essentially said there's just a couple of vitamins that we need you to take and give this a shot and see if it works. And the very next round of my cycle, I got pregnant with our youngest, and she is almost 3 now. So we have a pretty good age gap between our two. And I keep going back and forth. I've looked at the adoption process again, looked at the pregnancy process again, but also looked at how, I'm very content with where we are right now. So it's interesting how everybody has a different story to tell. So Kelsey, I know you touched on this, but when was that aha moment for you that you wanted to adopt? Besides, like, was there ever that just did you get there first? Did your husband get there first? What was that like, and how did you have that conversation?
So, to be completely transparent, my husband and I thought it was just going to be the two of us forever, just us and the dogs. We looked up some prices online of, signing up with different adoption agencies, and we were looking at the prices, just to sign up and, upwards of what, 100 grand. And we thought that's just crazy. um, which I mean, total respect for anybody who does that, but our financial situation would not have allowed that. Um, so, like I said, we thought it was just going to be us. And when my sister called me, I want to say it was March 3rd, I think. I can't remember exactly the date, of 2019. I mean, it was out of the blue. Hey, my coworker is looking for someone to adopt their child. The prospective parents that she had chosen had changed their mind. Do you want to adopt this baby? And immediately, without thinking, I said, yes, absolutely. And I was just completely giddy. I called my husband and told him, and he was the same exact way. And we knew right then and there that she was our daughter. And so we had met with her birth mother, actually at a Perkins. And she liked us. She was friends with my sister. And she said, I love your sister. So that means I'm going to love you too. And next thing you know, we get a call a day or two later that she's being induced in 3 days. So a typical home study only takes, well, not only, it takes 9 months, and ours literally took 3 days. At first, we thought that Emerson was going to have to go home with our lawyer because we didn't have our background checks back yet. So that's how much of a rush it was. Luckily, she came home with us from the hospital. But yeah, it was just a complete surprise, and honestly, it was kind of out of the blue. We thought later down the line that we would foster in hopes of reunification. But yeah, it was just a complete surprise and the best surprise ever because she's an absolutely amazing human being.
Absolutely. So, Jennifer, this next question's for you. I know you had two different experiences in the adoption process. Can you kind of walk us through what private adoption looks like versus what foster care adoption looks like, and what those two processes are like?
Yeah, of course. For private domestic adoption, uh, obviously there's more costs involved with that. In both instances, you do go through home studies. Um, but with the private domestic, you have more of like the independent home study, and it does take like a few months. So it's like a series of interviews and everything. And at the same time, you're preparing at what's called like a birth parent letter. I know nowadays everything is like a video. They do it on video, but when we were doing it, it was like almost like a storybook of like our family. So kind of presenting like what our family looks like, what we do, what we like to do as a family, um, and stuff like that with pictures of our family. And that would get presented to different birth moms. So during that time you're waiting, and we were told that our home study is only good for a year. So, and if it nothing happened in that year, the process would start all over again. So, including the fees. So we were like, okay, you know what? Let's try it. Let's see what happens in the year. So during that year, it's just waiting. You're waiting for the phone to ring. You're like, what's going to happen? And we got a few phone calls of potential matches. Like, we're going to present you your letter to this mom, and it's up to her. Um, some we were chosen, but at the end, it didn't work out. But we were already coming up to like the last month of the year, and we get a call, and they said there's a baby actually has already been born, and the birth parents would actually like to meet the both of you before making a decision. So yeah, we flew out to Minnesota because we're in California, and we met the birth parents in the hospital and were matched right there. And it was like this, it was such a unique experience, but such a blessing. And we got to meet both the biological mom and dad, and you do get like a lot of the medical history. There's more elaborate paperwork that's more involved, I
Mm-hmm.
want to say, with the private domestic. And so that was that process, and wow. It was we are so honored that they chose us. So it was a great moment for us, a great memory. And for foster care, it was completely different, because when you go through foster care, you are a foster parent. You get dual licensed for foster care and adoption, at least here in California. And what that means is, if you're fostering and parental rights do get taken away, you are the first ones that get the choice of adopting your foster children. So, because we're already licensed for adoption. So, that that took a lot of classes. So when you go and become a foster parent, you do go through a lot of classes. So we went to 3 or 4 months of classes and home study, and then you open your home up and you foster care, and the priority is reunification. So, you have to be on board with that. And my husband and I were okay with that. We had Gabby and we had Jonathan. And if we were just, opening our home, whether it was temporary or forever, we were okay with that. So Coda came first. We were fostering him for about 3 weeks when we get a call and said he had a baby sister and they would like to keep them together. So he came. So, of course, we said yes. And she came over about 3 weeks later. And yeah, we fostered them for 2.5 years. And that is a process because it's fostering, you have, but during this time, you're building trust with the child and vice versa. You're really getting to know each other. And yeah, then parental rights were taken away, and then you get an adoption date and you go in and, you get to legally adopt the child. And for fees, it's very minimal when you go through the foster care program. So we were really blessed. Two completely different processes. The only similarities would be there is a home study and there is a lot of waiting. A lot of waiting.
Yes. Did you let your between the two, and I don't know, I have been just on the foster and adoption side with the state of Arkansas when we adopted our daughter. But I know when we moved to Iowa, we had to go through the whole process of home studies again, even though we had been approved in Arkansas. We kept our home, our home open. Is it the same going from a private adoption to the foster care where you have to go through that process again? Or did you, how does that work? Switching from one to another?
Well, they didn't overlap. So,
Okay.
yeah, there was like a year and a half before we started doing foster care. So our home study was already done. We would have had to renew it anyway. But the questions and the stuff we went through, like the home study, was pretty similar.
And I think when you do private, I'm not sure about foster, but when you do the private adoption, your home study, you can renew it instead of have to completely redo everything. And I think that's definitely an easier process because we looked into doing that. That's definitely an easier process than having to redo the whole entire home study. But you have to do some extra paperwork after that year is up.
Interesting. It's all very interesting to learn about. So I guess to piggyback, and Jennifer, you can field this question, and Kelsey, kind of chime in with your thoughts on maybe how Emerson would react. But how did you prepare to open your home to children, foster care, private adoption? After pregnancy, how did you prepare your children, or how would you prepare your children for something like that?
For me, there was already such a lot of time. Like it was like I had mentioned, it was like 6, 7 years already, and we really prepared her. Like we wanted to make sure. Well, first off, because I was the one who started the idea of adoption. I was the one who felt like I really wanted to go forward with adoption. So I brought that idea up to my husband. And so once he got on board, it was very important for us to get Gabby on board, because if you're going to adopt, you really want everybody to be on board with that. So we just prepared her. We explained what adoption was, what it meant. We read a lot of books, and just really wanted her to know, what adoption was all about. And so she was very involved with the whole adoption process from the beginning, including like even putting our birth mom letter together. She was very involved with that, um, choosing the pictures. She wanted to write her little blurb on it. And so she was very involved with that. And then she got to see what that was all about with Jonathan. And they're so close. And since she was so involved with that, she loved it and was like, okay. When we thought about doing it again, she was like, yes, please. And we were like, well, we'll keep thinking about it. And she was like, no, please do it again. Let's start it again. She was really on board. And yeah, so she's amazing big sister. She's very close to all of them. But it was very important for us to get her prepared and to know, she had been just with mom and dad, and like it was just her for so long, that we definitely wanted to prepare her that, our attention, might not always just be for her. It was going to be split amongst all the siblings, but she was ready for it. And for us, it's just really important to try to prepare her for any expectations or what might come, or, so she's not surprised too much of what can happen down the road. But I think involving her so much in the process really, really helped her. And she felt like she was part of it. So that helped a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Kelsey, did you have any kind of ideas, or have you guys thought about? I know you've toyed with the idea of opening your home for foster care and reunification. What would that process look like for Emerson?
Well, to be honest, I think right now Emerson is truly enjoying being a single child. Uh, she's pretty spoiled, and she is very much obsessed with her dad and wants all of his attention when he's home from work. I'm sure she would love a sibling. She's always looking for new friends, and especially being a single child, I've encouraged her. For example, we go to a playground. Oh, looks like there's some kids. Why don't you go introduce yourself and ask if they'd like to play with you? And so now I'll take her to the park, and she'll just automatically go up to kids, ask, say, "Hi, my name's Emerson. Would you like to play with me today?" And of course, they always say yes, and they play with her, and she just loves it. She also has 7 cousins, all girls, that we are very, very close to, literally about 3 blocks away. And so we're constantly with our family. So she does have other kids that she plays with really often. But I think at home, I think she's happy being a spoiled single child for now.
Absolutely. That's fair. I get it. Pregnancy. So my pregnancy was after we adopted our daughter, and it was definitely a new venture for us. I never could picture myself pregnant, and so when I actually was pregnant, I was very leery because my body had never really cooperated prior to that pregnancy. And then with our oldest, I was very concerned of how she would react. So she was 5 when we got pregnant with our youngest, and I knew that she kind of would have some hurdles to overcome with feeling maybe that she wasn't getting all of our attention anymore. And she's now 8, and she still feels that way at times, which I think is very typical for young kids, to feel like my younger brother or sister gets more attention from me. But she, at the beginning, was very much, I'm good just being an only child. I'm good just not having anybody to share my time with. Part of that was because not only is she an only child here in our home, she doesn't have cousins. So she was the only granddaughter on my husband's side, the only grandkid on my parents' side. And so she was spoiled all the way around from every person and got undivided attention from every person. Now, her and her sister, they're best friends. They do everything together, probably all the things they shouldn't do together, like climbing trees, and I'm panicking that somebody's going to fall out of a tree. But it's great to see how that kind of wrapped back around, and she embraces her journey, and she knows her journey. That was something we were very adamant about from the beginning, is talking about the adoption process. My daughter was adopted from the foster care system, but I did know who her birth parents were. So I have kept up with pictures and things from their social medias in case she ever asks those questions. I don't share with her unless she asks, but she does know that she's adopted. A lot of times we catch people off guard because they'll say, hi Bentley, how are you? You look more and more like your mom every time I see you. And the first thing out of her mouth is, yeah, but I'm adopted, so I don't look anything like my mom. And people kind of like panic a little bit and think, oh my gosh. I'm like, it's okay. Like, that's just part of her story. And she likes to share that with people, much to like Kelsey had said with Emerson. She tells, go introduce yourself to those kiddos and go play. We encouraged Bentley to do that before, she had a sister. And even now I encourage her to go do those things. But we had to help her with the conversations because the terminology and I'm adopted. We've talked about it. We read books about adoption. She would go up to kids and say, hi, I'm Bentley and I'm adopted. Can we play together? And so some of the things we had to talk through, and I don't ever want to take that piece away from her because that is part of her story. But as she's gotten older, she's realized I don't have to tell people all of that. Like, that doesn't really change the way people feel about me, and people don't know that. But I'm happy that she feels comfortable enough and secure enough to be like, I'm adopted, but this is my family. Like, these are the people that chose me. And I think that's really an interesting perspective from all of you too, of how different the journeys were, but how we all kind of got to this place where our families seem to be pretty complete right now. We've got more pregnancy and adoption questions to talk about. We'll be right back after this quick break. Welcome back to Preggy Pals. We are continuing our topic of pregnancy and adoption and all of the questions that you are dying to know. In our last segment, we talked about questions that your adoptive children may be asking about their biological parents. And I'm just curious to know how you guys respond to those questions, and what helpful tips do you have for our listeners?
For me, my husband and I were always open with our kids, and we told them about their adoption from the beginning. For us, it does kind of help that three of our kids are adopted, so they do have that story together in terms of it's not just talking to one child about adoption, but they have each other to talk about adoption as well amongst themselves. But we opened it up with conversations and the books that you can about adoption and how to talk to your child about adoption. We For my son that we adopted through private adoption, I was able to have pictures for him. So we put together a book, like an adoption book for him. And so he has that. He has the pictures that he can refer back to and talk about being adopted. With our other two through foster care was a little bit different. They knew they were adopted because we were fostering them for 2.5 years, and they were already old enough by then. By the time we were able to finalize their adoption, Coda was almost 6. Kaya was like 2.5, 3. So they're a little bit older in understanding, like going to court, and now this means you're being adopted. We did the whole tummy mom, like you grew in another mom's tummy and she was your tummy mom and I'm your adoptive mom. And they're very open about talking about it. There's no stigma in our house or anything or make them feel any kind of way. It is just part of the story, and they talk about it openly with anyone who wants to ask. And sometimes they talk about it without even being asked, and but they don't feel like there's any stigma or like it's a secret or anything or any kind of way about it. They're very positive about talking about their story.
Yeah, books are definitely a great tool to use when they're young to teach them about adoption. Our social worker actually gave us a book that I love, and I still read it to this day to Emmy. And it's all about I wished for you, I longed for you, and then you were
Yes.
here. And there's a few other books as well that we have read. Now that she's 5, she's starting to really ask questions and try to understand, where did I come from? Why did I not come out of your belly? And she's asking all those questions. And you definitely have to think of a way to explain it to not have it too complicated, especially at 5 years old, so they understand. And also for us, we want to make sure that we are always telling the truth to her. We don't want to hide any of the details if she asks. Adoption can be beautiful and it can be messy, right?
Mhm.
And so she asks me all the time, Mommy, I didn't come out of your tummy? And I'll say, No, honey, you didn't come out of my tummy. You came out of, and then I'll say her birth mother's name. I'll say, You came out of her tummy. But you're my mommy. And so, it's definitely something hard to explain to really get them to understand, but I think it's very important to talk to your kids as often as they want to talk about it.
Yes, definitely. For my son too, because we're also a transracial adoptive family. So my son, he's African American, and we're Filipino and Mexican. He already started noticing differences very early, like 2.5 years old. He noticed like our skin colors were different, and he would start to ask and question that too. So um, that helped us in terms of opening up dialogue about adoption and to talk to him about that as well, because he was already questioning at such a young age.
I think that's really um, interesting how quickly they can pick up on those things.
Mhm.
And then at the same time, how it doesn't it never mattered to my oldest, where she knew, and it was just kind of like two ships passing in the night. Like, it didn't faze her in the slightest. We've had that conversation about, you grew in another mom's tummy, and then you're here. We read a book, God Brought Me You, to help explain some of those things as she was younger. It caught me a little off guard. I would say it was about a month ago, I want to say. On Saturdays and Sundays, we kind of just cuddle in bed together and we talk. And her dad's a really early riser, and her and I are not fans of being up before 8 a.m. on weekends. And so she just kind of comes in, we cuddle and we talk. And she said, Mom, I know that you're my mom, but how do I know what my other mom and dad looked like? And I told her, well, I have pictures, and when you're ready and you think you're ready to look at them, I'd be happy to share those with you. And she said, yeah, if you can. And they've been on my phone. She's a wizard on my phone, so I don't know how she's never seen, I have just an album titled Bentley's Birth Family. And she looked at the pictures and she goes, oh, those are my eyes. I can see that those are my eyes. And she kind of went through and she looked at the pictures, and his mouth looks like my mouth. And then she was done. She handed me the phone back. She goes, thanks. And I was just caught off guard with, how do I respond to this moving forward? And also really, really, it kind of helped secure things. Not that things hadn't ever been secure, but to realize that she just needs to see, but she's completely and 100% content right here where we're at. And that's, I think, always been my fear, being an adoptive mom and a birth mom, that I never wanted to feel that there's favoritism or that there's a biological connection versus a chosen connection, and keeping everybody kind of on the same wavelength. And that helped solidify that more for me, that, okay, we are doing something right around here. And that's always reassuring. So moving into our next question, both pregnancy and adoption can be tough mentally, physically, and emotionally. What supports did you have, Jennifer? And what supports would you suggest for those who are pregnant and thinking about adoption, or who have adopted and are thinking about becoming pregnant?
I had a lot of family support with my pregnancy and even going through adoption. And I think that's important, especially with extended family, if you go into it and saying you're going through adoption, because unfortunately there are some people that are like, why do you want to do it? And it's like, at least you'll know then you don't want their support. You only want to surround yourself with all those people that will support you and your choice of adoption. So luckily our immediate family, like mom, dad, like the grandparents and siblings, everyone was on board and super supportive of us. And, we were able to talk to some adoptees, which was great, to just kind of get their take and kind of figure out, how we can help our children that are adopted. And also talking to other adoptive parents or foster parents at the same time. And you kind of like, when you go through the foster care program, you guys you're in a class with a whole bunch of other foster parents. So that became a community in and of itself too, kind of that support of helping each other, which was huge because we were all kind of going through the same thing. But definitely a big plus for us was that our family was just very, very supportive in our efforts to adopt.
Absolutely. Kelsey, do you have any other supports that you would suggest?
Oh, well, definitely, family, of course. For us, I was raised very tight knit in my family. My parents and my sister and my brother, they were a huge support. I reached out, well, Emily, you were a support to me when I was going through that. Um, so, any friends, I had reached out to a domestic adoption support group, and there's some great communities there that you can reach out to, but you definitely need to find your person, right? You need someone that you can vent to, someone that you can, ask questions to, someone that you can get advice or just, hey, let's go get a coffee. I need a minute, right?
Hmm.
Um, you definitely need that person to just offer support while you're going through any process.
Absolutely. Was, I did grow up, small town, close knit, close to all my cousins. And when we adopted our daughter, we were 12 and a half hours away from our family. And that was difficult, very difficult to try to navigate that world by ourselves. And we did build a very strong community of, I call them my, pseudo mom, pseudo dad, pseudo sisters and cousins. And they really helped raise me while I was trying to figure out how to raise my child, because I didn't know what I was doing. And I was jumping into parenthood with an almost toddler, and I was lost. My background in early childhood education, I was like, this is not any, I don't know. I know how to teach ABCs. I know how to teach math. I don't know how to potty train a kid. I don't know how to work on, sleeping in their own crib. Like I don't know how to do any of those things. So I definitely felt very alone during my first kind of bout with being a mom. And then as my friends started becoming parents, I really got into being that postpartum doula and seeing how my services could be that person that you could go grab a coffee with, that person that you can vent to. And then it expanded from there to not just mothers who are pregnant and having babies, but to adoptive families as well, because postpartum isn't just a period that takes place after you have a baby. Physically, that postpartum period can happen after you adopt your baby as well, or your child. And then as I moved into being a biological mom and having a baby, I got a lot of the same where, you've done this before, you've experienced this before. And those were the people I really had to start looking at as to, like, do I want you in my corner anymore? Because I haven't done this before. I haven't had a baby before. I've welcomed a 10-month-old to my house, but I've not ever gone through the birthing process and the newborn process and all of these things that are now new for me. And that's when that realization hit again, that this is, every time is different for every person. So I won't ever be that person that says, you've done this before, or you remember last time with your first pregnancy, or you remember with your first child. I'm never going to be that person for somebody, because every experience is different. And I never want people to feel like they don't have the abilities to voice their concerns, frustrations, because they may not have experienced it the first time, or they may not remember experiencing it, because we're mentally and emotionally and physically exhausted no matter what we're doing, raising children. And everybody deserves to have that person in your corner to advocate for you.
Yeah, exactly. You having a toddler right? Your oldest daughter, she was a toddler when you first had her. Having a
Hmm.
toddler versus having a newborn is completely different worlds, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's a completely different thing, right? So you were new at that, and you need to have someone there to support you throughout that whole entire process.
Absolutely. So we're going to move into one of our final questions, and it's a big one. But let's talk about finances. How do you prepare financially to adopt, either while you're pregnant or after pregnancy, or just adopt in general? What does that look like financially, and how or can you ever be fully prepared for it?
Yeah, I don't know if we did have, for us, we did have savings, and our parents um, did help, and we did some fundraising. And I know you can get loans and stuff, but I don't know if you can prepare as much as you can, I guess, even if you have a child. Um, but it is costly, and for private adoption for sure, and which is why we stayed, and that's why they say domestic adoption, which is within the United States, as opposed to international, which is so expensive. And yeah, it was very expensive. um but it for us, it was not all in one shot, so it wasn't like one payment, and it was like little payments throughout the whole process. So that kind of helped as well. And when you go through foster care, it's very minimal. And your child does come with, insurance. But once you go through private adoption and you adopt, that child is yours, like as if he was just born into your family. Um, so like you have to provide everything, so it's just like adding any other, like if you were going to have a child, it's just like that, like adding on to your family with a new child. How can you possibly know what can happen, whether you're pregnant or adopted, and what kind of financial issues might arise. you know you can only hope and pray you saved enough. But yeah.
I completely agree. And I think I've had this conversation with numerous friends. I kind of did everything a little bit earlier than everybody else in my friend circle. So getting married at 20, having, adopting our first kiddo at 25. I think the rest of my friends were closer to 30 when they were getting married, and now in their 30s having babies. And a lot of their responses were, we want to be financially prepared. And I get that. I totally do. But I don't know if we ever get to that point where we feel so financially prepared that we don't have to prepare, or that we will ever get to the point of being like, yes, I have all the money that I need. So
Right.
I think you won't ever have kids if you don't just do it at some point in time, because I still am like, man, we've been doing this kid thing for almost 8 years, and I still am like, whew, how would we add another kid um, to the roster here? But at the same time, I know we would. I know we would be able to. Um, and I joke with my cousin, and her husband is a big financial money manager guy, and he brought like a whole spreadsheet to one Christmas of they were saving to have a baby, and he had like boxes of diapers broken down and daycare and all of the finances, and he was showing it to me, and I'm nodding my head as supportive as I could be in that moment, because I just kind of wanted to laugh. And he was like, so what do you think? And I said, well, I think it's a good try. Like, you come and tell me in a year how this is going. So next Christmas they had a baby, it's November, December. They had their baby, I think, in October. And they come into Christmas, and I'm like, I'm excited to see this spreadsheet. How's that going? And he goes, oh, I tried. Do you know things change and kids get sick? And then we're at the, like, I estimated for the doctor like 2 times a year. And I'm just I'm like, yeah, like, good try. But, I mean, I think it's good to plan. It's good to change your lifestyle some of, like, maybe you can't go on 4 trips a year, and let's, limit those to 3 and see if that saves you some money. And you aren't probably going to be able to go on 4 trips a year with a newborn. You could try, but it was highly stressful for me. But those are some of the things I think you can start to think through. But I don't, like you said, I don't think you're going to be fully 100% financially ready, because things come up and they're not always things you think of.
Yes.
Yeah, we were definitely the complete opposite of your cousin's husband. Um, Emmy was such a surprise. We had nothing, right? We had, I don't know, maybe $3,000 in savings and the same amount in checking. I mean, it was just me and TJ. We were living our best life. We were going on vacations, and we had just bought a house. And so when we were going through it, originally we thought the lawyer told us that it should be around $3,000, right? Because we had our own birth mom, so we didn't have to go through an adoption agency. And it was so late in her pregnancy that we, with the state of Iowa laws, we really could not give her much money for pregnancy related expenses. Um, and so her adoption was contested, and that's a whole nother story. So she ended up, not she ended up, we ended up spending around $24,000 within 9 months of surprise lawyer fees because of that. And so honestly, we made it work. My husband is self-employed, and so he worked extra hours. Um, and, when we had to, we would put bills on credit cards, and we would use our cash to pay the lawyers. We did what we had to do. Uh, and I would 100% do it again. But even if we had planned, my daughter, she had an unexpected health concern, right? She was life flighted to the hospital, and turns out she's epileptic. And being self-employed, of course, we do not have the best health insurance. We had a high deductible plan. And between 2 months, because it went from November through the beginning of January, was all those expenses. Surprise, we had a $14,000 hospital bill that we had to figure out. So, and those aren't things that you can plan for. Of course, you can save for, but who thinks that they need to save $14,000 for a
Mm-hmm.
hospital bill, right? Especially for a 3-year-old. So,
Right.
it's kind of like juggling. You have to, take what life throws at you.
Yeah. Yeah, we were given like a breakdown, the agency gave us for when we adopted our son, and there was like this breakdown. Okay, this, it's been a few years, because I don't really know the exact amount, but it was a couple thousand for, the lawyer's fees, and then we had the agency fee. And because my son was born in another state, we weren't prepared for that, because in the state of Minnesota, you actually have to use an agency and lawyer in that state. So that was an added, I want to say 7 to 8 grand on top. Like, they needed it right then when we flew into Minnesota. Of course, there was the travel, like the, quick tickets to fly over there, and then the hotel stays, because we had to stay there. So, so that was just quickly added on. And thankfully, our parents were able to help us out, both sides. But yeah, you just go with it, and and you figure it out. And I would do it again.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Adapt and overcome.
Exactly.
100%,
So
yeah.
in closing, what are tips that you have for moms who are pregnant now, wanting to adopt, or adoptive parents that are looking to get pregnant, or just in general to parents out there? What tips do you have for them?
If they're looking into adoption, definitely do a lot of research. There's a lot of great resources out there. Listen to other adoptees to get their take on their life as an adoptee. I think that's really important. Um, there's a lot of books. There's sensory books. There's trauma related books, which have all helped, us, my husband and I, when it came to adoption. And um, just giving like, for if you already have a child in your home, just make sure that you prepare them if you're going to go into adoption. I think that's important so that they kind of know ahead of time what kind of can be expected. So but definitely do a lot of research. I think right now, especially now, there's so much information out there on adoption, whereas when we first adopted there was hardly anything.
I would definitely say be patient.
Yes.
Um, and, adoption is hard, but it is beautiful. For the families that have adopted and are wanting to get pregnant, good luck. And I really hope the best for anyone that wants a child one way or another. You do what you think is best for you. And um, adopting our daughter was the best thing that we've ever done. And I would do it again, probably, maybe, if the correct opportunity arises. But the adoption process, it takes a lot of steps, but you just have to go through those steps, be informed, like Jennifer said, listen to adoptees, see what they have to say. Any adoption comes with trauma, so you have to be willing to do what is best for that child and seek out whatever resources you need to for that.
Yeah, I think for one thing that I love to stress is if you're going into adoption, to make sure that you're really don't put any expectations on this child. Like, you're going to accept this child no matter how they come. You can't, like they say, you're going to provide a family for a child and not a child for a family. Like, don't make them have to fit in a certain way into your home or into your family. Like, it should definitely just be bringing that support to that child. Make sure that they are accepted and wanted however they come to you. I think that was really important.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much to all of our guests who joined us for this episode today. Be sure to check out newmommymedia.com, where we will have all of our podcast episodes, plus videos and more. That wraps up our show for today. Thanks for listening. If you love Preggy Pals as much as we do, please consider checking out the amazing businesses that sponsor our show week after week. And we'd also love for you to tell other pregnant mamas about this resource, which of course is absolutely free. And if you want to check out some of the other podcasts we produce, such as Newbies, Parent Savers, The Boob Group, and Twin Talks, then visit our website at newmommymedia.com. Thanks for listening to Preggy Pals, your pregnancy, your way.
This has been a New Mommy Media production. The information and material contained in this episode are presented for educational purposes only. Statements and opinions expressed in this episode are not necessarily those of New Mommy Media and should not be considered facts. While such information and materials are believed to be accurate, it is not intended to replace or substitute for professional medical advice or care, and should not be used for diagnosing or treating healthcare problem or disease or prescribing any medication. If you have questions or concerns regarding your physical or mental health or the health of your baby, please seek assistance from a qualified healthcare provider.
Hey mamas, don't forget to check out Mighty Moms. It's our online community built for new moms just like you. Not only can you connect with other moms, but you can also join us backstage for special mom-only online events. And you'll also be notified when we're recording so you can join us as a special guest. Visit our website, newmommymedia.com, and click on the Mighty Moms banner. It's free. That's newmommymedia.com. See you there.